July 7th, 2016. Southwest Delhi. It's a humid morning in Dwarka, the kind of morning where the air feels heavy, almost as if it's holding a secret. Inside flat number 312, the Tiwari family is starting their day. Gaurav, a fit, 31-year-old man with a sharp jawline and a confident smile, walks toward the bathroom. To anyone watching, he looks like a man with a plan. He's a famous TV personality, a trained commercial pilot, and the founder of the Indian Paranormal Society. He's the man who walked into Bangor Fort at 2 a.m. and told the ghosts of India that he wasn't afraid of them. It's the sound of a body hitting the floor. His wife and father rush to the door, screaming his name, but there is only silence. When they finally break through the wood, they don't find a crime scene out of a movie. They find a tragedy. Gaurav is on the floor, his face turning blue, with a dark, horrific mark around his neck. The man who dedicated his life to explaining the unexplainable had just become the biggest mystery in Indian history. But the real story didn't start in that bathroom. It started the night before, when Gaurav returned home from a case and told his family, "A dark force is pulling me, and I can't stop it." Was Gaurav Tiwari hunted by the very things he tried to study? Or was there a much darker, human reality hiding in the shadows? Stay with us as we piece together the final 24 hours of India's most famous ghost hunter. To truly understand the weight of this case, we have to go back to 2007. Gaurav Tiwari wasn't born into the world of the occult. He was a man of logic. He was in Florida, training to be a commercial pilot, a job where every move is dictated by physics and math. But while staying in a shared apartment, Gaurav's rational world was ripped apart. He began hearing footsteps when the house was empty. He saw a spectral girl standing in his room. Most people would have called an exorcist, but Gaurav did something different. He decided to treat it like a flight manual. He wanted to know the mechanics of fear. He abandoned his flying career and spent years studying parapsychology. When he returned to India in 2009, he brought something the country had never seen: scientific ghost hunting. He wasn't using tantra or lemons. He was using K2 meters, REM pods, and digital audio recorders. He became the face of shows like Fear Files and Budaya. He was the guy who would walk into a possessed house, look at the weeping family, and calmly explain that their ghost was actually just a carbon monoxide leak or a high electromagnetic field causing hallucinations. He was a hero because he took the horror out of the haunted. But as the years went by, the cases started to pile up. Over 6,000 investigations. Imagine the mental toll. Every night, Gaurav was surrounding himself with grief, trauma, and death. His colleagues noticed that the scientific Gaurav was changing. He began talking less about sensors and more about negative energy that follows you home. He was becoming a magnet for the very darkness he tried to debunk. By early 2016, his professional life was a battlefield. The TV shows were drying up. The fame was there, but the money? The money was gone. Gaurav was trapped. On one side, he was the famous ghost hunter that millions looked up to. On the other side, he was a 31-year-old man in a middle-class Delhi flat, facing immense pressure from his family to give up this unstable career and get a real job. His wife and parents wanted a pilot. He wanted to find the truth about the soul. This wasn't just a career crisis. It was a psychological collapse. He was being squeezed between the expectations of the living and the whispers of the dead. How much can one man's mind take before it finally snaps? Leave a comment if you think the pressure of society is more dangerous than any ghost. We are moving into the final 24 hours. July 6th, 2016. The sun had long set over Delhi, but the heat of the day still hung in the air. For Gaurav Tiwari, this wasn't just another night. He had received a call about a young girl in Janakpuri, West Delhi, who was allegedly going through a violent possession. Now, remember, Gaurav had seen this 1,000 times. Usually, he would walk in, find a logical explanation, and calm the family down. But that night, something was different. Those who saw him leave for the case say he seemed preoccupied, almost as if he was carrying a heavy weight before he even reached the house. He spent hours in that Janakpuri home. We don't have a camera recording of what happened inside those walls, but we have the aftermath. When Gaurav returned to his Dwarka flat at 1:30 a.m., he didn't look like a man who had just finished a job. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost, not the kind he usually debunked, but something real. He sat down with his wife, and the conversation they had is perhaps the most chilling part of this entire mystery. He told her that he felt a dark force following him. He said it was a shadow that didn't belong to him, a presence that was physically pulling at him. His family tried to brush it off as exhaustion, but Gaurav's eyes told a different story. He stayed awake for a long time that night, staring into the corners of his room. The next morning, July 7th, the world seemed to return to normal. Or so it seemed. Gaurav woke up, spoke to his parents, and behaved like the son they knew. There was no suicide note being written, no final goodbye whispered. At around 11 a.m., he told his family he was going to take a shower. He walked into the bathroom and turned the lock. This is the moment the timeline becomes a blur of tragedy. Just a few minutes later, his family heard a sound that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. A massive, dull thud. Not the sound of a fall, but the sound of a heavy impact. His father and wife hammered on the door. "Gaurav, open the door." Silence. They peered through a small gap and saw him lying on the floor. When they finally broke the door down, they found him unconscious. His pulse was thready, disappearing. But here is the detail that the police focused on. He was found with his wife's dupatta around his neck. He had reportedly tied it to the shower heater, but the heater had broken under his weight, causing him to fall. That was the thud the family heard. They rushed him to the hospital, but by the time the doctors reached him, the ghost hunter was gone. The Delhi police, led by DCP Surinder Kumar, arrived at a scene that made no sense. This was a happy household. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken glass, and most importantly, the door was locked from the inside. This is what investigators call a closed-room mystery. If no one else was in the room, then the only hand that could have tied that knot was Gaurav's own. But why? Why would a man who spent his life studying the transition between life and death decide to cross that bridge so violently and so suddenly? As the police began their forensic sweep, they looked for anything: a letter, a hidden diary, a message on his phone. They found nothing. No suicide note. But what they did find was a man whose digital life was in chaos. His emails were full of stalled projects, and his bank alerts showed a balance that was rapidly disappearing. The autopsy report arrived a few days later, and it was cold and clinical: death due to asphyxiation. But the report also mentioned a deep, dark blue bruise around his neck. To the police, it was a clear mark of a ligature. To the paranormal community, it was something else: the fingerprints of a shadow. Do you believe a person can be driven to the edge in just one night? Or was this a plan Gaurav had been hiding for months? This is where the human story ends and the conspiracy begins. Let us know your theory in the comments. When the police finished their investigation, the headlines screamed about ghosts and spirits. But the detectives were looking at something much more grounded, yet equally terrifying: Gaurav's bank statements. You see, being India's most famous ghost hunter came with a massive price tag. Gaurav had built the Indian Paranormal Society, IPS, on a foundation of high-end technology. These weren't gadgets you could buy at a local store. They were expensive imports. As the popularity of paranormal TV shows began to dip in 2015, so did the funding. Gaurav was caught in a lethal trap. To maintain his status, he had to keep investigating. But the investigations were costing him more than they were earning. His team of 6 technical experts had slowly dwindled. Colleagues like Shishir Kumar noted that toward the end, there were very few active projects. Gaurav was a man who had tasted the heights of fame, appearing on MTV, Sony, and Z News. But now, he was sitting in a quiet flat in Varka, wondering how to pay the next month's bills. For a man who was once a pilot, the feeling of crashing was literal. But then, there's the theory that refuses to die: the Bangor connection. Gaurav had visited the Bangor Fort, widely considered the most haunted place in Asia, multiple times. While he always told the public it was just a picnic spot, his private journals suggested something else. Some believe that the negative energies he encountered at sites like Bangor or the Kuldhara village didn't attack him physically, but psychologically. Parapsychologists call this residual attachment, the idea that a place of great trauma can leave a stain on your mind. Did the darkness of 6,000 cases finally pool together to create a depression that no medicine could cure? Fast forward to 2025. The name Gaurav Tiwari is back in the news. The release of the web series Bay, the Gaurav Tiwari mystery, has reignited the fire. But it's not just about the show. On the sets of this series, the lead actor, Karan Thakur, reported a suffocating atmosphere while filming scenes inside a recreation of Gaurav's home. Equipment would fail, shadows would move where they shouldn't, and the crew felt a constant sense of being watched. Whether this is clever marketing or a genuine haunting, it proves one thing. Gaurav Tiwari has become the very legend he spent his life trying to simplify. The story of Gaurav Tiwari isn't just a true crime story. It's a story about the fragility of the human mind when it stares too long into the void. The police ruled it a suicide due to financial and family pressure. The believers rule it a supernatural tragedy. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Gaurav was a man who tried to bridge two worlds, and in the end, he was crushed by the weight of both. He showed us that ghosts might not be real, but the darkness we carry inside us certainly is. As we close the file on the last clue for today, we ask you, is it possible for a man to be hunted by his own passion? Was it the dead, or was it the dark force Gaurav warned us about? Look at the evidence, listen to the silence, and tell us what you believe in the comments below.